folks. Let me take a little bit of time right now while this stove cools down. It's cooled down a little bit already, but I want to take some time and I want to talk to you about my final thoughts on this stove. First thing is, you know, you can see that I'm getting a little bit of white gas on this rag, and it just wipes off the letters right off of this tank. So you're going to lose all that white paint. This tank is going to be just red after some time. I don't think that's that significant of a deal, honestly. I think it's just something that I'm letting you know. I've had another fuel tank from I think it was the same manufacturer. I bought just the tank alone. It was cheap, but it was orange, and the white paint, the instructions and danger and all that wore off. That's to be expected, I guess, when you're not paying much for the fuel tank. This works out pretty good. I like the pump. The stove seemed to perform fairly well. Now, while I was off camera here just a second ago, I went on their website again where I purchased this. Again, it was off of eBay, and I looked to see what kind of multi-fuel that this stove really is, and all I could see was that it'll work on white gas and isopropyl canisters with the Lindale valve. I personally don't believe that that is true multi-fuel stove. Okay, so I think, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, but in my opinion, I think this is a white gas or maybe automotive fuel type stove. Now, does that mean it's a bad stove? No, it don't. Are there other stoves out there that would outperform this thing? Absolutely. And one of my opinions is, if you're a person that is on a budget, maybe you don't have a lot of money, maybe you don't want to spend a lot of money for your trip, I would recommend looking at something. If you're going to be on eBay, I'd try to find something like an MSR Whisperlite International. Maybe find something like that, a good old used one, because I have several of those, and you can pick them up for around $30–40. Usually with they usually have a can with them and a pump, and they're good stoves. Even if, and they don't work on this type of fuel. You'd have to get the Whisperlite Universal to work on these. But as far as the liquid fuel options, you would have a lot more fuels that you could burn out of that old Whisperlite International. Now, if you want to get something that has the ability to do both of these operations, then you're looking into maybe a Whisperlite Universal, which is an amazing stove, or something like the Optimus Polaris. I would recommend one of those two. Even the Primus Himalaya Omni Fuel Light, I think they call it, that's a good stove too, but those are a lot more expensive than $38. And on those stoves, if you buy them brand new, you're going to have to purchase an additional fuel canister. Okay, now you can find fuel bottles like this SIG. I bought this on Amazon, or excuse me, on eBay. I bought this SIG. I only paid like $6 for it because it had a dent in it. And it was an auction, and I won the auction. Nobody was bidding on it. Well, there was bids, but they didn't want to pay $6. So I guess in the end, you know, I think this is a good stove. It did take a little more time than I had expected it to boil the water. I thought that the stove was going to put out more BTUs than it actually did. This metal, now these pot supports are like a stamped stainless steel, I believe, and they seem strong. But this outer portion right here of the stove looks like a pot metal to me, and I think that would break if you drop this thing. Like if you're rock climbing and this is in your pack and it falls 50 feet and hits a rock, I think it's goodbye to this stove, honestly. I'm not saying that to knock the stove or anything like that. I'm just trying to give you guys a real review on this stove. The performance was good. I wouldn't say that it was an excellent performer. The flame control was okay. It did have the ability to run both, and I didn't change any jets. Again, I don't know if this is an extra jet or if this is a different jet for other fuels. I don't know, because the owner's manual, the only thing that they give you is just this sheet right here, and it does not talk about that at all. It just talks about how to operate the stove. I do like the pump. I think the pump is good. Even though after I depressurized, when I went to remove the pump from the fuel bottle, I did notice there was some leakage. And what I mean is from here, from this connection, I'm sorry, not taking the pump from the bottle, taking the stove from this pump, there was a little bit of leakage. Again, I'm looking here and I don't see anything about any other fuels other than white gas and these canisters. So for 38 bucks, I think it's a good buy if you're going to be very careful with your gear, because again, I think this pot metal isn't that strong. I think it would break. I really do. Everything else is solid. The generator loop is solid. The legs, pot supports are solid. I love the fuel line. The pump is good. But why would you put all of that around pot metal? I just think that this is the weak link here, and I think it would break. I could be wrong though. But that's my thought on the stove. I think, you know, for 38 bucks, it's a decent stove. I don't think it would be my, if I was going to spend, if it was me personally, and I was going to be spending $38 towards something, I would be putting that $38 towards an MSR stove, honestly. Because I looked just the other day, and the MSR Whisperlite Universal, which is probably my favorite stove at this moment, that stove runs, Amazon just knocked it down from like 140 bucks down to like 93 bucks. And I know that sounds extremely expensive, but man, you get a quality product with that thing. I mean, the liquid fuel operation, and it'll run on canisters all day long in liquid feed mode. It's definitely not made out of pot metal, but it's 93 bucks. I do like how this one had the shaker needle, and I do like how it included extra O-rings and a pump cup seal and stuff like that. I do like that. I think that's cool. Another jet in there. I like that, because if you were to get an MSR pack or kit like this that covers every O-ring in the stove, that would be their expedition service kit, and those are about what, $20-$30? Don't quote me on that price, but they're like, I'm guessing $20 to $30. And they cover all the O-rings, and they have jet and everything, tool, shaker. So, again, in a nutshell, I think it's a decent stove. I wouldn't really go, you know, crazy saying, you know, hey, this is the stove to get, because I just don't like the idea of this pot metal. And honestly, folks, I could be wrong. It could hold up. I don't know. I've seen things made out of that kind of metal before, and they failed, and maybe I'm being a little bit firm. See that metal? I just don't think it's strong enough. I mean, it's like they did everything else really good, and I think they kind of skimped on that one department, and that's a department that you can't afford to skimp on, in my opinion. Of course, if they would have made that with better metal, they wouldn't have had a $38 price tag on it either. So that's probably where they were saving the money, in my opinion. And again, folks, I could be completely wrong. I do like how it's fairly compact. I do like that it came with the service kit and a nice pump. I do like the wind reflector, even though I didn't use it, and the bags are kind of junk, but for the money, I don't know. I think that's up for you guys to decide. Me personally, I don't think I would recommend it. It was a performer, but I just don't think that it's solid enough for the type of operation that I'm going to be looking for when it comes to a survival stove. And that's what I'm going to be using the stove for, is to purify water. It's to cook food, and I want something that's going to be extremely reliable, and MSR does that. I would recommend something reputable. Again, Optimus Polaris is about $150. That's a high price tag to pay. So you need to come down to the MSR line, and I'm not saying they're cheaper stoves. I'm saying they're good American-made stoves, and I've never had a problem with any MSR stove I've ever owned, and I've owned them for years. They've always held up. They've always been good to deal with. When I needed a part, which wasn't that often, I called them up and they helped me out. Sometimes they charged me for the part, sometimes they didn't, and they're just, in my opinion, probably the best stove you can buy. If this thing breaks down and you need that housing, who are you going to contact to get that part? I mean, we're dealing with APGOutdoors.com. We're dealing with a place in China. So yes, it is cheaper to buy this. It's cheaper to purchase this, but in the end, is it really going to be worth it? I would, if I'm going to spend $38, that's pretty close to 40. And if you go on eBay for 40 bucks, I can almost promise you, you will find a Whisperlite International for around 40 bucks. If you put a bid on something, I think you'd win the bid. It'll probably come with a fuel bottle too. That's just my opinion. So folks, I hope you got some good useful information out of this video. Please feel free to leave your comments down below. Like this video, share this video, and if you like the content that you're seeing on my channel, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. And until next time, my recommendation would be pass on this one.